Thank you very much to all the panelists. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm Rishi Kapoor. Already my introduction is over. I work as sales manager for York Johnson Controls. I'm based out of Delhi. I'm almost 20 years in the industry. So coming directly to topic without taking much time. Here we are trying to introduce what is chiller plant, what is air conditioning plant, what is central air conditioning plant. So first basic question comes to our mind, why do we need it? We need it because sometimes it is very hot. To maintain the temperature, I'm going very basic, there are other reasons also, but why we basically need air conditioning, whether it is window AC, split AC or chiller, to control temperature. So this is a typical example of a city in which what we are trying to say, how weather is changing throughout the year. So if you see x-axis, this is city of Miami. I'm sure it matches with many of our cities in India also. Why I use this graph, this is very beautiful representation of temperatures and number of hours. Like if you see x-axis, this is dry bulb temperature. So here dry bulb temperature is varying from 95 degree Fahrenheit to 55 degree Fahrenheit. And on vertical bar, we are seeing number of hours. Y-axis is number of hours on left hand side. And on right hand side, this blue line is showing wet bulb temperature, average wet bulb temperature during those periods. So if what we are trying to say, when my dry bulb temperature is 90 to 95 degree Fahrenheit, my entry condenser water temperature, you can say it is wet bulb temperature plus 7 degree or plus 5 degree, is going to be around 84 or 83 degree Fahrenheit. So when my dry bulb is between 80 to 85 degree Fahrenheit, at that point, my entry condenser water temperature is going to be around 80 degree Fahrenheit. So this keeps on changing. It is not fixed. It is real world scenario. So why we need chiller plant? Because it is very hot outside and we cannot just open windows, because if we'll open windows, hot air will come, or I would say heat will flow from hot to cold. You will get heat inside, right? And we want inside more colder. And how does Mother Nature work? Heat goes from hot to cold. If we open windows, what will happen? Heat will come from outside to inside. Cold does not go from cold to hot. Heat energy flows from high energy to low energy, right? Which means heat can come from hot to cold, not from cold to hot. And body's air conditioning system is sweating, and sweat is nature's refrigerant. In our body, if we see, now coming directly to refrigeration basics, I'm sure most of you have very well conceptualized this. This is same as any refrigerator, any window AC, any split AC. So we are putting a simple analogy. This is a chiller. So this is a chiller. What chiller job is? Chiller is going to produce chilled water at a certain degree. So for example, chiller is producing chilled water at 7 degree centigrade. It goes in the building. It takes heat. It removes heat from the building, right? And comes out at 12 degrees centigrade. And here it comes back to the chiller. We are taking a typical example of water-cooled chiller, in which condenser side is also cooled by water. And what is happening in condenser side? There is a cooling tower. Cooling tower is sending water at, let us say, 30 degrees centigrade, coming out at 35 degrees centigrade. And here we are cooling this water from 35 to 30 in cooling tower. So cooling tower job is to bring down the temperature of water. How it does that? Evaporative cooling, right? It is rejecting heat to the atmosphere and cooling water from 35 to 30. What is the job of chiller? Job of chiller is to produce 7 degrees centigrade water. Inlet is 12 degree, outlet is 7 degree. So job of chiller is to reduce temperature or from 12 degrees centigrade to 7 degrees centigrade. Right? And for this, we have various other systems. We have chilled water pump, we have condenser water pump, we have various isolation walls in it. We'll have AHUs in the buildings. We have cooling tower. Now, typically, what is happening in the chiller? So this is an example of type of chiller, which is centrifugal chiller, but more or less things will remain same in other chillers also. So there is a compressor. This compressor is centrifugal type, which has an impeller, but this compressor can be screw type also. This compressor can be scroll type also. In early days, it used to be reciprocating type compressor. This is condenser, a water-cooled condenser, which has got shell and tube type arrangement. These holes which you are seeing, these are nothing but copper tubes. So these copper tubes are carrying water. Outside this, we have refrigerant. On this side, this is evaporator. In evaporator, it can be of multiple types. This example shown is flooded evaporator, where again these tubes are carrying water and shell is flooded with refrigerant. So we'll talk about it, what type of evaporators. So we'll discuss about it. This is expansion valve. It is orifice type expansion valve shown here. So if we look at our refrigerator also, if we look at our window AC, split AC, or a chiller plant, cycle remains same. Main component remains same. So these water-cooled condenser become air-cooled condenser in a split AC or a window AC. Evaporator also becomes air-cooled in window AC and split AC. Air-cooled in the sense, your exchange of heat is happening between refrigerant and air. Here in water-cooled chiller, we are bringing water as a media in between air and refrigerant. pH diagram, I'm sure most of you will know it even better than what I know. So this is pH diagram, this is liquid line, this is vapor line. So anything beyond this line, you will have only vapor. Anything before this liquid line, you will have only liquid. In between, you have mixed condition. And what we are saying, in evaporator, refrigerant is getting evaporated. I'll go back maybe to explain further. So what is happening in evaporator? This is light blue color. It is low pressure. And when it enters, it is liquid. It is slowly getting converted into vapor. So low pressure, low temperature, liquid refrigerant getting converted into high pressure vapor. So evaporation, what is happening in evaporator? Liquid refrigerant is getting converted into vapor. State change is happening. Same way state change is happening in condenser also. From condenser, high pressure, high temperature, vapor is coming, entering into the condenser, and it becomes high pressure liquid. Again state change happening, vapor to liquid. So when it is happening vapor to liquid, it is rejecting heat to the atmosphere. When it is becoming liquid to vapor, it needs heat. From where this heat will come? Ultimately, this heat will come from the building. We have to cool the space, and that space has a higher heat than desired heat. So that undesired heat is given to refrigerant for vaporization. So we can see refrigerant absorbs heat from the load in evaporator. In condenser, refrigerant rejects heat to the atmosphere. And this difference between red line and blue line is called lift. Lift is very important, fundamental in our cycle, pH diagram, very important. Most of our energy, most of our output, most of our input discussion revolves around lift. So higher the lift, more compressor has to work. Lower the lift, compressor has to work less. A typical example, if we talk about a split AC or a chiller, has to work in Bangalore or it has to work in Delhi. In Delhi, in peak conditions, when temperatures are high in the range of 45 degrees centigrade outside, your evaporator is same in both the conditions. So your lift is more in case of Delhi, your lift is less in case of Bangalore. So your compressor will work more in Delhi in summer season or in monsoon season compared to Bangalore. So now we have also drawn components along with pH diagram. So condenser line, for a water cooled condenser, we have cooling tower, and we have from cooling tower, water is coming at 85 degrees Fahrenheit and going out at 95 degrees Fahrenheit. In a AHU coil, water is entering at 44 degree Fahrenheit. From AHU coil, water is coming out at 54 degree Fahrenheit. So it gets into chiller at 54 degree Fahrenheit and comes out at 44 degree Fahrenheit. Right? Lift is difference between this. So it was liquid here at this point. It became vapor. So this is mist eliminator, which does not allow liquid to pass through. So these are vapors which have passed through. Low pressure vapor. So this gets converted into high pressure vapor after coming out from compressor. It is being sent to condenser, high pressure vapor, and start getting converted into high pressure liquid. From expansion valve, liquid is sent from high pressure to low pressure, liquid refrigerant. So this also we discussed. On right hand side of the vapor line, we have only vapor. On left hand side of liquid line, we have only liquid, and in between we have mixture of this. So these are also very important terms. Superheated vapor. Why we say it is superheated? So it gets converted into vapor on this line. After this line, it becomes superheated. It is, and same way, before this line, it is subcooled liquid, because it becomes liquid when we just hit this line. Beyond this line, it becomes subcooled. So we try to draw this. So what is happening? State change is happening. It is low pressure liquid is getting converted into low pressure vapor. Here this becomes vapor, refrigerant. From here, compressor work will start, low pressure vapor to high pressure vapor, which is this, right? And now we are converting high pressure vapor to high pressure liquid. This is condenser. And this is metering device, which is pressure reducing. Yeah, so on this slide, we are trying to show what is difference between refrigerant temperature and water temperature. So we saw a typical diagram of chilled water. So let me go back to that slide. Yeah. So what is chilled temperature, chilled water out temperature, 44 degree Fahrenheit, right? What is condenser water temperature? In 85, out 95. Please remember these three temperatures. This will help us in understanding numbers on the other slide. Yeah. So what we are trying to show, so look at the dotted line first, black dotted line. My chilled water temperature out from chiller is 44 degree Fahrenheit. my condenser water out is 95 degree Fahrenheit, right? For meeting this, if my chiller is performing this duty, at that duty point, what will be my saturated refrigerant temperatures? My refrigerant temperature has to be lower than 44, then only I'll be able to get water at 44. For example, if my refrigerant temperature is 45, I'll not be able to get 44 degree Fahrenheit chilled water temperature. It has to be colder than that, right? So if I need 44, let us assume my refrigerant temperature is with 2 degree approach, 42 degree Fahrenheit. Same way on condenser side, if my living condenser water temperature is 95 degrees Fahrenheit and it is rejecting heat, it is so it has to be hotter than that temperature, then only heat rejection can happen. So refrigerant temperature has to be higher than that. Condenser saturated temperature is 2 degree higher than this. So my actual lift in terms of temperature becomes 97 minus 42, which is 55 degree Fahrenheit, right? This lift actually has to be in terms of pressure, but pressure and temperature are directly proportional. So we are telling only in terms of temperature as of now, but let us. So we are saying chilled water 44, 54. My refrigerant temperature has to be lower than this, which means 42 degree Fahrenheit on condenser. My in and out is 85 and 95. It has to be higher than this refrigerant temperature 97. So my lift is 97 minus 42, which is 55 degree Fahrenheit. Now we look at in terms of pressure. So what will be pressure of refrigerant at 97 degree Fahrenheit? It is 118 psig. What will be pressure of refrigerant at 42 degree Fahrenheit? It is 37 psi. So if we have to see how much in terms of pressure, how much is my lift? 118 minus 37, which is equal to 81 psi is my actual lift. This is deciding how much work I need to do in the compressor. So 81 psi. Lower it is, better it is. So we'll cover this in coming slide. So now what we have done in previous slide and this slide, if you see, we have done one change. So here my condenser was at 95 degree, right? Condenser out. Now my weather is better outside and I have condenser entering as 75 degree Fahrenheit and out as 85 degree Fahrenheit, which means I have, my lift is less, my refrigerant temperature is 2 degree above 87 degree Fahrenheit. In previous example, it was 97, now it is 87. So what I have done, I have reduced lift by 10 degree Fahrenheit. 10 degree Fahrenheit also resulted in, if you see in previous example, my lift was 81 psig. Now it remained to, or it is left to 60 psig, which means I have reduced 21 psig lift. My compressor has to do less work now. How much less work? It is like 28% reduction in energy. So the example which I was giving you, Delhi, Bangalore, it can be other colder climates also. If you have 10 degree Fahrenheit difference, you are going to have 28% reduction in energy as a thumb rule. Now this is winter season when my entry water temperature is 55 degree Fahrenheit. It is no more 85, no more 75, it is 55 degree Fahrenheit. 55 degree Fahrenheit is 12 degrees centigrade, right? My out is 65 degree Fahrenheit. And my refrigerant temperature is 67 degree Fahrenheit. So in place of 97, it is 67 now. And my pressure here is 67 psi. Now my lift is 30 psi. And for this small lift, My reduction in energy is 63%. So what we are trying to show, we have reduced lift by 30 degree Fahrenheit, 30, and my reduction in energy is 63%. Every 1 degree Fahrenheit is saving close to 2% in energy. So we want lower lift in all kind of air conditioning system, whether it is window AC, split AC, or a chiller. Fundamental doesn't change. So what we do to achieve lower lift in a given, we cannot change by ambient condition. We are in a city where ambient is fixed, right? But we can have better heat exchangers which can give me lower lift. So for example, if I design my heat exchanger, my condenser in such a way that my lift can be reduced, here we are assuming it is 2 degree Fahrenheit always. So if we can get a design which has 1 degree Fahrenheit approach, it will be even better. 1 degree here, 1 degree here. Right? So lowering the entry condenser water temperature lowers the lift and reduces the compressor work. It saves you energy, it saves you running cost. Few more thumb rules. So evaporator has a water cooled chiller. Evaporator, you have water in, you have water out, and it is a closed loop. What is the formula for flow? How much water? So we need flow 24 into tons divided by delta T in Fahrenheit. For 10 degree Fahrenheit, the example which we were taking, 44 and 54, it is 2.4 GPM per ton. Condenser has an open loop. We have a cooling tower which is exposed to atmosphere, right? And here we talk about a typical formula, 30 into tons divided by delta T. 3 GPM per ton with 10 degree Fahrenheit delta T. It is not precisely 10 degree, it may be 9.3, 9.4, close to that. But just to give high level understanding. Now question is, why condenser GPM is higher than evaporator GPM? So we have a, for example, 200 ton chiller. Why my condenser has higher GPM than evaporator when both of them are designed for 10 degree Fahrenheit delta T? It is because condenser heat rejection is equal to evaporator heat transfer plus compressor work done. So if we can see our window AC also, our split AC also, heat transfer area in condenser is much higher compared to evaporator, because condenser is heat transfer across condenser is equal to heat transfer in evaporator plus compressor work. Right? We can see this in pH diagram also. Now we talked about lift so much. Why we were talking about lift so much? Because energy is important. Whole our discussion, whole our new product design are driven by one basic need, energy efficiency. Energy was never more important than today, because fuel costs are increasing and energy is a running cost for any organization to be sustainable. Everybody is looking at energy. First and foremost question becomes how sustainable this solution is for next 10 years, next 15 years, next 20 years. Earlier, we used to look at only first cost of the solution. Today, we look at running cost more than first cost. So in chillers, generally we talk about kilowatt per ton. What is kilowatt per ton? For producing 1 ton of cooling, how much electricity in kilowatts will be using? These values are less than 1. Lower it is, better it is. So when I say 0.5 kW per ton, 0.6 kW per ton, 0.7 kW per ton, which means we are talking about this chiller is going to consume 0.7 kilowatt of electricity for producing 1 ton of cooling. right? So your output is in denominator, which means this number has to be lower and lower. Lower is better. Second term which we use, energy efficiency ratio. It is, so energy efficiency ratio, these values for a water cooled chiller are between 8 and 10. And unit conversion is kilowatt per ton is equal to 12 divided by EER. Higher it is, better it is. So energy efficiency ratio, they both are in opposite direction, you can see. So one is in denominator, one is on upper side. So EER, higher it is, better it is. 10 EER is better than 8 EER. 0.5 kW per ton is better than 0.7 kW per ton. And COP, we have started using this term also, COP, which is metric unit, in which COP is nothing but your output divided by input. Both the units are in kilowatt. They don't recognize tonnage, they recognize both the units in kilowatt. So which means what we have, so values are generally in the range of 6, 5.5, 6.5, 7, something like that. So what does that mean is, for producing in 1 kilowatt of electricity, how many units of cooling kilowatt you are producing. So when we say cooling kilowatt, 1 TR is equal to 3.516 cooling kilowatt. Right? High, and this number also, higher it is, better it is. 6.5 COP chiller is better than 5.5 COP chiller. Some more rules of thumbs. So we have many more equipments, like we have cooling towers, we have chilled water pumps, we have condenser water pumps, water cooled chillers, air cooled chillers. For a very high level, this thing, though actual calculation, will have to make those calculations. For a 100 ton, it will be 5 HP. Chilled water pump, 100 ton, primary chilled water pump, it is 100 ton, 5 HP. Condenser water pump, 100 ton, 5 HP. Water cooled chiller, 100 ton, 75 HP. Air cooled chiller, 100 ton, 140 HP. We have taken an example of a 500 ton now. These all things were done at 100 tons. What happens in a 500 ton? So 500 ton cooling tower is approximately, it is not actual. It is like very high level, 18 kilowatt. Chilled water pump, 18 kilowatt. Condenser water pump, 18 kilowatt. Water cooled chiller, 280 kilowatt. Air cooled chiller, 600 kilowatt. So takeaways from chillers, basics on chillers and lift. We need air conditioning system because outside it is hot and we cannot just open windows. Basic component of chiller. Compressor does the hard lifting. So whatever lift is required to produce that delta P is done by compressor. Then we need to do tower and pump sizing. We'll discuss in my next presentation how do we do that. But at a high level, efficiency is very important. So we also discussed efficiency values and conversions and some rules of thumbs for energy consumption. As a thumb rule, what will be energy consumption of all these equipments, right? Let me share my next deck. So my screen is visible?
Yeah, visible.
Thanks. So we already discussed about this. So maybe I can correlate from my last presentation deck. We were saying why heat rejection in condenser is more than evaporator. If you see this is condenser, is much bigger than this heat transfer. What is extra? Evaporator is, for example, this is 10, and from this point to this point, additional this thing is 2. So condenser is 10 plus 2, which is 12. So condenser has more heat exchange area, or condenser has higher heat rejection because it is sum of evaporator plus compressor valve. So when we say it is 100-ton chiller, maybe it will have 125 or 120 or 130-ton condenser. We always talk chiller in capacity of evaporator, but my condenser is actually higher heat transfer than evaporator. Now we look at chilled water system, which is air-cooled chiller. So what is happening in air-cooled chiller? You have an air-cooled chiller typically on terrace. Doesn't mean that it will always be on terrace. It can be on ground floor also. It should be exposed. Idea is it should be exposed. Then only it can exchange heat, right? And it will have evaporator. That evaporator is same as water-cooled chiller evaporator, and it is giving chilled water to various AHUs. These are AHUs. So this is air-cooled chiller, which only has one water circuit, which is evaporator circuit, because its condenser is air-cooled. Condenser is like our split AC outdoor unit. So you can see these fans. These fans are for airflow. This airflow is happening because there is heat exchange to happen between refrigerant and air directly. There is no water in condenser circuit. So direct heat exchange between refrigerant and air. And below these condenser coils will have an evaporator, and that evaporator has one water inlet, one water outlet. Water is coming out at 44 degree Fahrenheit, going to various AHUs in the building at different floors or maybe multiple floors. And from these AHU coils, it is coming back at 54 degree Fahrenheit. So we have a pump here. We don't need cooling tower here because we don't need condenser water pumps. So we only need chilled water pumps. So these chilled water pumps can be only primary, secondary, or variable primary. Scheme can be anything, right? Now we typically look at how water-cooled chiller scheme looks like. So this is a water-cooled chiller, generally sitting in basements, but it can also come on ground floor, it can come on terrace also, but a typical example is generally it is placed in basements. Then we have AHUs on multiple floors, which is getting chilled water from chiller. And there is one more water circuit which is going to condenser through cooling tower. So this is a cooling tower, we have condenser water pump. So you have another water circuit flowing water. So cooling tower gives 30 degree water, 32 degree water, comes out from cooling tower at 30, gets into condenser, comes out at 35, goes back to cooling tower. Cooling tower again converts into 35 to 30. So these two heat exchanges are continuously happening. Right? So we can see what is difference between these two systems. So this was air-cooled chiller system and this is water-cooled chiller system. So in the air-cooled chiller, it uses outdoor heat as heat rejection medium. Right? So it is directly rejecting heat to outdoor air. Whereas what is happening in water-cooled chiller, we have a water circuit from cooling tower. So it uses water for heat rejection. So here water is getting heated from refrigerant. So how do you design air-cooled chiller? So for example, we were taking example of Bangalore and Delhi. You need a 100-ton chiller. In Delhi, it need to be 100 ton at 45 degrees centigrade temperature. When we talk about Bangalore, 100-ton chiller when ambient temperature is 35 degrees centigrade. Right? So what are AHRI condition for a nominal condition, you can say, which is specified by AHRI. AHRI is third party who has given the same condition. for knowing nominal capacity and nominal performance comparisons in green building. So 95 Fahrenheit ambient, which is equal to 35 degrees centigrade, 44 chilled water in and out. What happens in water cooled system? It needs required separate cooling tower. And what cooling tower does, there is a heat exchange happening between water and air, right? Evaporative cooling is happening. Air leaving this has more, or I would say higher humidity, more water vapor. So the water which was coming directly in contact with air, through evaporative cooling method, water becomes colder and air is carrying more water vapor now. And HRI condition for water cooled chiller is entry condenser water temperature is 85 degree Fahrenheit and leaving is 94.3 degree Fahrenheit. Evaporator, it is same like air cooled. But what additional equipment we need in water cooled? We need cooling tower additional, we need condenser water pump additional. So we were talking about for a air cooled chiller, our design basis has to be ambient temperature of the air, and ambient temperature is maximum temperature available in that city. For a water cooled chiller, our design temperature is entry condenser water temperature. And what will be my entry condenser water temperature? It will be dependent on performance of cooling tower. And what is the variable for cooling tower? Cooling tower will see it, what is my maximum wet bulb temperature of the air, plus what is my approach, what is my efficiency of cooling tower. Right word is approach, not efficiency. How close I can get to wet bulb temperature of the air. So generally, we used to do all our calculation at 7 degree Fahrenheit approach. Now we are talking about 5 degree Fahrenheit and 4 degree Fahrenheit approach, because we have more heat exchange area in cooling tower. We have CTI certified cooling tower. So we get closer, or I would say lower entry condenser water temperature, but it depends on wet bulb temperature. So in other words, air cooled chillers are designed on a higher temperature because it is directly governed by dry bulb temperature. Water cooled chillers are designed on a lower temperature because it is driving factor is wet bulb temperature, which is always less than air cooled system. Some advantages of various type of chillers. Air cooled chillers, we say not necessarily, but low installed cost. Why it is low installed cost? Because it has no cooling tower, it has no condenser water pumps, no piping for condenser water circuit. So better space utilization also. No cooling tower maintenance or water treatment required. More space inside, quieter inside. You can add late in construction cycle. It is like plug and play because there is less site work involved. Good for existing building expansion, retrofit. It is package system. What happens in water cooled chiller? Advantages is it is lower kW per ton. Why it is lower kW per ton? It is designed for a lower temperature. It has got longer equipment life. No glycol requirement for most applications because most of the time we are indirectly working. Reduced outdoor noise because it is generally in the basement. Chiller service also will always be inside the mechanical room, so no problems. Now we come to components in chilled water systems, right? Oh, sorry, in chillers. So we have a compressor. Compressor also has a motor with it. We have condenser, we have evaporator, we have expansion valve. Right? If it is water cooled, we'll have cooling tower, or it is air cooled, right? Condenser can be of two types. And then in the building, we have AHUs. If we look at what is the one thing which is moving thing, most of the things are stationary. In chiller, typically in this black box, it is only compressor and motor which are, or rather only motor which is going to consume energy. There can be few auxiliaries like oil pump, oil heater, oil, but major consumption, electricity consumption, what we are talking about is going to happen here. Right? Now we come to evaporators. What are the type of evaporators? We have, these are like PHE type evaporators, plate heat type. So you have on one side refrigerant, on other side you have water. Right? Construction is like this. Water and refrigerant pass through opposing heat exchanger plates. Right? It is generally composed of SS and copper. Most economical heat exchanger, low level of service and maintenance, limited serviceability. So generally it is used in smaller capacities, maybe around 150 ton. So in larger capacities, we have shell and tube type arrangements. When I say we have, industry has, so it is, so this evaporator, if you see, it is shell and tube type arrangement, and there are copper tubes, and there is a carbon steel shell. So water inlet is here and water outlet is here, and these are refrigerant inlets and outlets. So refrigerant is inside the tubes. Water outside the tubes, refrigerant inside the tubes. Footprint is larger than plate heat type exchangers. It has got limited serviceability. Right? So heat exchange is happening between refrigerant and water. Very simple design. So this is falling film evaporator. It is advanced generation of flooded evaporator. So I'll explain you flooded first. So if you see this bottom diagram, here we have copper tubes which are carrying water, and refrigerant, this, for example, this design, refrigerant will be flooded with the refrigerant. Water is coming through in and out. Right? Here it is possible to clean the copper tube. You remove the water box and you can clean the copper tubes. Because these are carrying water, if there is any fouling, you can remove the water box and clean the tubes. With the help of chemicals also, with the help of flexible rodding also, with the help of cleaning systems also. Right? Now, what happens in falling film? Falling film is, so if you see, these are two set of bundles. Top set of bundle is different, bottom set of bundle is different. So we are saying it is hybrid design. So this bottom portion is always flooded with liquid refrigerant. In top portion, liquid is falling drop by drop. Wherever it touches the copper surface, copper tube surface, it gets converted into vapor. So it is very effective utilization of heat exchange area, better efficiency, lower refrigerant charge, effective utilization of heat exchange area. So what we are trying to say, 100% utilization of heat exchange area will be when it is 100% hybrid falling film. But there has to be some balance. We cannot achieve 100% falling film. The moment liquid touches my surface area, it should become vapor. There should not be liquid lying unnecessarily in the evaporator. So in hybrid falling film, maybe 70% or 60% will be falling film design, 40% will be flooded. Right. So this is traditional falling film, traditional flooded, in which it was completely flooded with refrigerant all the times. So maybe, for example, for a typical 500 ton chiller, my refrigerant requirement was close to 600 kgs. Now that has been reduced to 400 kgs with more advanced falling film evaporator design, and efficiency also improves. Or I can say, without compromising efficiency, refrigerant quantity has been reduced. And when you have less refrigerant to handle, your efficiency improves, especially on part loads. So we have discussed 4 types of evaporators: PHE, which is brazed plate evaporator; DX evaporator; flooded evaporator; and falling film evaporator. So this is most advanced, this thing, which has high heat exchange area, higher efficiency. So we were talking about, when I say higher efficiency, you want very close temperature to your water temperature. Refrigerant temperature should be very close to your water temperatures, right? So we were talking about 44 and 54 water temperatures. So ideally, I want a system in which I can achieve maybe 1 degree Fahrenheit approach or less than 1 degree Fahrenheit approach. So it is possible mostly. So in DX evaporator, your approaches are high to the tune of 4 to 5 degree Fahrenheit. In flooded and falling film evaporator, you can get as low as 1 degree approach also. Now coming to type of compressor. So recip compressor, though there is no slide for it, but it is very similar to the car engine or any engine what we see. Right? We have a cylinder, we have a piston. Those are no more in use because of efficiency and higher maintenance. Now we have migrated to scroll and screw chiller design in smaller capacities. So scroll compressors are this kind of construction. So these are rotating in opposite directions. Compression is happening by trapping refrigerant in between these axes. These are like maximum size is around 37 ton per compressor. These are working on R410A refrigerant, which is high pressure refrigerant. And generally these are, so for example, a typical 100 ton chiller will have 3 or 4 compressors. So it will be compressor on or off for achieving part load efficiency, part load capacity. We can also have hot gas bypass to ensure increase turn down ratio. Compressors, OEMs are generally these two, Bitzer and Copeland. There are few more, but generally these are the 2 most popular ones. And these kind of compressor can be available in both air-cooled and water-cooled applications. Capacity we see from a chiller, compressor capacity is around 30 to 37 tons. Chiller capacity typically we see generally less than 150 ton. It can be higher also, but generally it is less than 150 ton. Coming to screw compressors, so these are screw compressor which are medium pressure design. So if you see, this is the compressor design. So there are 2. One is male rotor, second is female rotor. These are coupled direct. So one of male rotor is directly coupled to the motor. They rotate in opposite direction. Like this, refrigerant enters from here and gets trapped and gets discharged from here. Right? So you can say this is discharge port and these are suction ports, inlets. So this gas is getting sucked at a low pressure and getting converted into high pressure. So blue is becoming red when it gets discharged. So here capacities are available generally between 75 to 450 tons. It can also have variable speed drive. Many compressor OEMs are available with their own design. Unlike Scroll, in Scroll we have limited compressor manufacturers. I mentioned all chiller companies buy compressor from these OEMs. But in case of Screw, mostly company have their own compressors. And this compressor also can be done in air-cooled as well as water-cooled applications. Now coming to centrifugal compressors. Centrifugal compressors are medium and low pressure. So refrigerant, it can be on R134A. These are available in larger capacities. It starts from as low as 300 ton, it goes as high as 3000 tons. Traditionally, these used to be only oil lubricated. Now, newer generation, or I would say latest advancement in this is, these are also coming as lubrication free technology, which is magnetic levitation chiller. And these are available only in water cooled applications. So if you see what is happening in centrifugal, it is just like a pump. There is an impeller which is spinning at high RPMs, maybe 15,000, 20,000, 25,000, depending on what dia impeller is. Sometimes it can be even 40, 50,000 depending on dia of the impeller. And in a typical chiller, your motor is spinning at 3000 RPM. So you need speed increasing gear. So motor will be coupled to a gear, gear is coupled to impeller, so that impeller can spin at 20,000 RPM, 25,000 RPM. So you need speed, maybe 6:1, 7:1, that kind of thing for achieving higher speeds. And then you need lubrication all the times. So you will have separate oil pump, oil cooler, oil heater, complete mechanism for making sure lubrication is there. This bottom cutout is of a magnetic centrifugal, magnetic levitation centrifugal chiller. So what is happening? We have same impeller now coupled to a high-speed motor. High-speed motor which is directly spinning at 15,000, 20,000 RPM. And now I don't need speed increasing gear because this is magnetic motor, it can spin at higher speeds. Second, it has got magnetic bearing, so which means there is no physical bearing. There is no metal to metal connection. It will always remain floated. I'm sure you all must have heard of magnetic maglev trains. It is nothing, same concept as maglev train, in which it is floating in the magnetic field. The moment you energize, magnetic field develops and it floats. So there is no physical bearing. So when there is no physical bearing, it means we don't need lubrication. So your inefficiencies which were getting added because of oil pump, oil cooler, oil heater, all those inefficiencies are also eliminated. Second thing is, when we look at all our air conditioning systems at home, domestic, split AC, window AC, we have a oil in refrigerator, oil in ACs, compressors. So oil and refrigerant are mixing with each other. They have great affinity, especially at lower refrigerant temperatures, right? So, and oil is a bad conductor of heat. Refrigerant is a good conductor of heat. Why we use oil? Because for lubrication, there is oil. There is no substitute to oil. But oil is bad conductor of heat. When they mixes up and it sits in copper tube, it reduces your heat exchange area. It is actually insulation. Right, kind of. So wherever oil will sit, your heat exchange is going to be bad. 2% oil, 3% oil can spoil efficiency by more than 5%. This is studied by ASHRAE. ASHRAE paper is available on this. So all those problems can be eliminated in a maglev chiller. So efficiencies can be improved much better. You don't have gear, you don't have oil in the system, you don't have oil heater, you don't have oil cooler, plus your motor is more efficient, your part load efficiencies are going to be very good. So this becomes latest advancement and biggest advancement in air conditioning, I would say. So three types of compressor when we look at: scroll compressor typically up to 37 tons compressor on and off. In screw compressor, so this is my typing mistake, it is 75 to 450. It uses variable speed drive also. It is stepless capacity control. Centrifugal is used only for water cooled. Higher efficiency is the main this thing. Maglev chillers also available in this. Now, what else? So we look at condenser types. In air-cooled condenser, we have two different type of condenser. So one condenser is which we generally see most of the time. Our domestic split AC also has this kind of arrangement. So we have aluminum fins and we have copper tubes, right? So refrigerant is entering and getting out from this, and heat exchange is happening between refrigerant and air. And the other type of condenser is this type of condenser, which is it is all aluminum alloy, industrial grade aluminum alloy, which is e-coating, special e-coating also done to take care of atmospheric conditions. And there are very small holes in the channel. So refrigerant is flowing through those channels. It is no more 12 mmOD or 19 mmOD. It is very small holes which are having, channel is having, and refrigerant is moving between them. So this is channel and this is channel, and these are fins, right? So your heat exchange area in this is close to more than 2.5 times of a similar area of traditional coil. Advantage in this is, so this was very regularly used in automotive industry. So there were modification done for using in our stationary HVAC applications, in which coil was made more robust by increasing thickness, by changing flux material, by changing other things. And now because you have more heat exchange area available, you have better efficiency also. Now fin damage also is very less likely, because these are fins are excess between the channel. These are not appearing outside. Here you can draw and type your name, draw your name. Wherever you press, these fins get pressed, then it is very difficult to bring back that heat exchange area, because once it is pressed, that is blocked. Your air will not enter in that area. All those problems can be eliminated here. Plus, this one is made more robust also. So your efficiency is better, your reliability is better. Win-win. New technology. So other thing we were saying, what happens in a traditional condenser? So wherever there is a bonding between copper and aluminum, that is a point. It is one becomes cathode, second becomes anode, and there is galvanic corrosion starts happening. What happens in all aluminum design? There is no two different metals. So there is no question of one becoming cathode, one becoming anode. So galvanic corrosion is purely eliminated, and hence life is more. Second, these are very deep generally, and these are less deep. So cleaning also is very easy of microchannel type of condenser. Very easy cleaning. Now coming to condenser. So in a water-cooled chiller, in a water-cooled chiller, our condenser was shell and tube type. In air-cooled chiller, we were discussing it was air-cooled type. So what happens in a water-cooled condenser? We discussed evaporator. So this condenser also looks like same, right? It is flooded type of design, and water inside the tubes, refrigerant pool outside the tubes, water pumped to cooling tower for heat rejection. So you have a separate pump which is pumping water in the cooling tower. Tubes can be cleaned as standard maintenance. And these are subcooler part. So condenser has got two parts. This is purely a condenser and this is subcooler. Located at the bottom of condenser, system's coldest water, cooling tower return, passes through subcooler tubes. So coldest water, when it is just coming from cooling tower, it passes through this first, then this. reduces refrigerant temperature as much as possible before it passes through variable orifice. So idea of this is to do subcooling to improve efficiency before it passes through expansion valve. Purpose of this is to improve efficiency. Now, type of expansion valves, metering devices. We have electronic expansion valve, we have thermal expansion valve, we have fixed orifice types expansion valve, we have variable of orifice type. So what is difference between fixed orifice and variable orifice? This orifice will be variable in case of variable of orifice, which means it will, as per your requirement, it will regulate as per what is the load requirement. What happens in fixed orifice? It is always trying to maintain certain level of liquid refrigerant in evaporator. So variable maybe costs more, but it will give you better efficiency, especially at off design condition. It will be giving you requirement as per, it will be working as per your requirement, not as a standard this thing. When you have changing weathers, changing loads, variable orifice is more suited. So now we look at two types. What happens in an air-cooled chiller? We have scroll type chillers, we have screw type chillers. What happens in evaporator? We have plate heat type and we have hybrid falling film screw compressors. We have DX evaporator also. So these three are the possibilities. In condenser, we have microchannel design also. We can also have standard condenser, which is tube and fin. We can also have shell and tube type, which is not possible in case of air cooled. It will come in water cooled. In type of orifice, it can be thermostatic expansion valve or it can be electronic expansion valve. When we come to water cooled chiller, in water cooled chiller, we can have all three: scroll, screw, and centrifugal. So one reason is centrifugal is not there in air cooled. Right? Why it is not there? Centrifugal has lift capability is low. In the sense, it can work on moderate lifts, it cannot work on very high lift. In air-cooled chiller, you need higher lifts. In evaporator types, we can have brazed type, we can have hybrid falling film type, we can have flooded type, we can have DX type. We can have all four. DX type is, DX evaporator is not possible because it is water cooled. In condenser, we have microchannel design, we have, we have only shell and tube design. We do not have microchannel, we do not have tube and fin. Why we do not have? Because it is water cooled condenser. Orifice, we can have thermostatic expansion valve, we can have electronic expansion valve, variable orifice, all three. So we are not saying any particular chiller has flexibility to give any of this. What we are saying in general, in water cooled chiller, what theoretically is possible, what theoretically is not possible as a technology. Not any model, not any brand, not any this thing. That's all. I hope this gave some visibility of chillers.